Well, tēnā koutou katoa, no America ho no te tematanga, ko te taita toku manga, ko waitaki toku awa, ko otatahi toku kainga inai nei, e roia toku tunga mahi o Perryfield Lawyers, ko Stephen mo toku ingoa, no reira nā mihi kia koutou katoa. Hey, it's wonderful to welcome you here. Before we started recording, we were looking in the chat and people were typing what the weather's like where they are. So we know that it's mainly sunny across the whole country. My name's Stephen Mo, and I'm joined by my colleague, Sophie. Sophie has her computer open as well, because as we're talking, we're going to be putting links in the chat. And that way you'll be able to click on resources or things that we're talking about. And our aim here is really to empower you with information. So at the end of this session, you will have no excuse for not having been given a whole lot of detail about changes which are coming for incorporated societies. So one of the things that we like to encourage is, I know you can use the chat because you told me the weather where you are. So please type your questions to us. Make them as hard as possible, because we've had, I think we're up to 102 or something now. 107. So on our website, we have an information hub, and there's 107 questions that we've been asked in similar sessions to this. And so we're trying to really provide the answers, because if one person's asked it, probably someone else is thinking it. So there's a lot of resources available, and we would love to add, maybe we can get to 110 questions. Let's see. So just before we get into the detail, the way this session is going to run is we're going to be telling you 10 things that we think are important to know from an Incorporated Societies Act perspective. Now, there's a few different groups of people on this call. There will be some of you who are advisors. You might be accountants or lawyers. You're helping people with what these changes will mean. So welcome to you. There's also people who are actually officers or involved in incorporated societies. So you're wondering, like, what does this all mean for my particular group? So welcome to you. And then there's other people who are kind of in bodies which sit across the sector. People who maybe are inputting at a policy level or a governance level. So welcome to you as well. And if I didn't add you in the category, everyone is welcome. It's going to be a learning experience, and we really want to facilitate this and provide information that will help you. So we're going to do that by explaining what the changes are that you need to be aware of. Before we do that, a little bit of context. Well, actually, before we do that, a little bit of explanation. When I start speaking, you hear my accent. I actually grew up here in New Zealand. So we moved here when I was 7 years old. My parents were from America, and my dad was a marine biologist, so kind of an unusual profession. Brought us to New Zealand. As a family, we fell in love with it and we stayed. So I grew up in Christchurch in Otatahi and went to Canterbury University. I then worked in Wellington for 3 years at a big law firm called Russell McVeigh. And then I left and was gone from New Zealand for 11 years, in London, 3 years, Tokyo, 4 years, Sydney, 4 years. And then my children came home singing the Australian national anthem. So my wife and I thought, it's time to come back to Aotearoa. And when we got back, I really wanted to invent my career again around purpose and impact, which is what's led me to specialize in this kind of area, which is things for incorporated societies, for charities. But I am also helping a lot of businesses which are focused on purpose-driven activities. So that's just a little bit of explanation. We're both in a law firm called Perryfield Lawyers. We've got about 80 people in our firm. We have 4 different offices, and I was in Wellington last week. I'm in Queenstown tomorrow, helping people across the country. And at the end of the session, we'll tell you about some of the resources that we have that we think may help, that are free. So let's go back to a bit of history lesson. This is the 1895 Act. And as you can see, it's very thin. It's literally 1 page, 2 page, 3 page. There's 18 sections. So they knew how to do things back in 1895. This was the Unclassified Societies Registration Act. And that's really the precursor of what you probably are more familiar with, the Incorporated Societies Act 1908. So people get confused about this, but this is still in force. This is still what you would do if you were applying right now to become incorporated. And as you can see, it's bigger, but not that bad. It's 25 pages. There's about 40 or so sections. Now that's in contrast to the new act, which is the Incorporated Societies Act 2022. And as you can see, we had to use a few more trees to get this one. So that's 133 pages. And I think there's about 270 sections. So it's a lot bigger. Now, I could start this off by saying, oh, there's too much regulation and oh dear, look at all this stuff we have to comply with now. But actually, I want to present a glass half full scenario, which is that a lot of the things that are in the new act still apply. It's just that they've now been codified and put into the statute. So it's not like you didn't have duties before, or it's not like you didn't have liability before, or it's not like you didn't need to comply with these things. It's just it was never written down in the same way. So my encouragement is to view the changes as being a chance to reinvigorate your organization, because you're going to need to re-register. So the latest updates we have on that in our talking with MB is that October is still the date that you'll be able to re-register as incorporated societies. There will then be a 2.5-year period from October 2023. So that runs us through to April 2026. Yeah, I had to think there for a second. Time traveling into the future. So the point is there's actually quite a long window for re-registration. And we see some people coming to us and saying, oh, I need to urgently pass the new constitution or the new rules because we're running out of time. Actually, I would encourage you just to take it slowly. Don't feel the urgency. Instead, consult with all the stakeholders, your members, the people who matter, and then come up with a plan for what your new rules will say, and then actually register when you can, because you can't even register right now. So it's kind of pointless to adopt new rules today. The reason is that there are possibly regulations that may change between now and October. So having talked with the people at MB, we don't think that there's going to be any major change. We think that it's going to be minor, if anything, but we don't know exactly what the regulations will say. So that's just a word on the history, the context, the timing, and hopefully that gives you, in some ways, some assurance that you know, it isn't a hit the red panic button sort of moment. It's more, let's think about this, let's get it right. And the reason why this is important is that there are 24,000 incorporated societies. So if you do the math, in theory, every single one has at least 15 members under the old act. We'll get to that in a second. So 24,000 times 15, that's literally hundreds of thousands of people who are involved in incorporated societies in some way. So of course, the members may be, it's not on their radar, but this does have massive impact in a way to many Kiwis. So the other thing, as we get into the top 10 changes, is that we have done some slides, which we will send out after this. And so feel free to practice your scribbling notes skills, but we will send the top 10 changes with our speaking notes. And we will also send this, which is the guide for incorporated societies. So this is a free guide, which we just hope helps people to understand all the changes that are coming. Not as big as the Act. And we've put in a bunch of questions, FAQs, and there's also a bunch of videos and things up at the website, which you probably have visited if you're on this call. So that is the part that I think I'm going to record. So I'm going to hit stop record because that was really the update I wanted to give to people on where we're up to. And then we'll get into the top 10 changes.